but I didn't get a good look at everybody's paper. So just because I walked past you doesn't mean that I looked at your paper closely enough to see if you might have done this completely correctly. Most people did it mostly correctly. Okay, what do? What's the first step you're going to take in solving this?
Would you multiply both sides by y squared?
Yes, you always multiply by the denominator. Okay? But of course, when you do that, you can't multiply by 0, so you specify that y can't be 0. Okay? So, and of course you know from up here that y is not going to be 0 up here either, because 1 over x squared is always positive. So it doesn't really throw a wrench into anything, but you want to note that. In good equation solving, you have to make that note. Okay, so you get y squared x equals 1. Okay? And then what are you going to do? You're going to divide both sides by 1, or by x. But of course, x can't be 0. But x isn't even in the domain of this function, so it's no big surprise. Not going to be in the domain of this one, okay? It's not in the range of this one, so it won't be in the domain of this one. But you want to think about that. You get x equals, you get y squared equals 1 over x. Then what do? Got to be careful. This is not right. Partially right, but it's not completely right. What's wrong with it? There's another principle of equation solving that y'all seem to be neglecting here.
Would it be 1 over the square root of x?
Well, yeah, but that's equivalent to the square root of 1 over x. Okay? So there's nothing wrong in that aspect, although we could write it that way, okay? And that might be the way we'd want to write it. So that's a good step, but this step is still wrong. And 1 over square root of x would be wrong, although it's partially right. When you solve something squared equal to something else, that something has to be plus or minus the square root. It could be plus or it could be minus, because when you square both sides, it doesn't matter if this is a plus 1 over x or minus square root of 1 over x. If you square it, you get back to this, right? So negative 1 over the square root of 1 over x has to be a solution to this. If y is negative square root of 1 over x, then y squared is 1 over x, right? Now we've talked about this before. Okay, there are two things, at least two things in equation solving that people keep forgetting. And I mean, you talk about people who are taking differential equations, and they keep forgetting. Okay? Because it never made sense to them, because it was never explained so it makes sense, and they were never required to make sense of it. Just required to memorize it for a few minutes, long enough to circle the right numbers in an SOL test, or whatever. Okay? But also because, yeah, it's not the easiest thing to remember. I remembered it. I'm not sure I totally understood the sense of it until I was in college. And yeah, I remembered that from freshman year of high school. But, you know, making sense of it comes later. Okay, so whether you make sense of it or not, if you solve the square of something or an even power of something equals something else by taking a root, it's got to be a plus or minus. It's a hard and fast rule, and you want to remember it. Okay, because if you don't, you lose half your solutions and points. Probably wouldn't penalize you half the points unless it was really important. David,
Can you say it one more time, please?
Again?
Say it one more time, the rule.
I'll write it down.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go on with this. Remind me to write it down. Okay? Okay, so we get this. So now is this a function? It would be a function if you didn't have that plus or minus on there, right? But if, for example, x equals 9, what do you get? Well, square root of 9 is,
3.
yeah, 81, right? No, 3. Okay? And this will give you 1/3 or negative 1/3. That's two possible answers. It's not a function. And I'll just say, well, you choose a branch of this function, of this relation. Okay? Like you could choose the positive or the negative branch. Okay, well, I could say more about that, but let me write down that thing David just asked about.